The war moved into Southwest Asia when the Allies hoped to take a part of the Ottoman Empire called the Dardanelles. That would allow them to capture Constantinople, the Ottoman capital, and send supplies to Russia through the Black Sea. The attack failed with great loss of life. In another thrust at that empire, a British officer named T.E. Lawrence helped lead an Arab revolt against Ottoman rule. As a result, the Allies were able to capture several important cities in Southwest Asia. Japan took German colonies in China and the Pacific Ocean. The Allies also captured 3 of the 4 German colonies in Africa. People in the Allies' colonies joined in the war effort, some working for the Allied cause, while others fought in the armies. The British had used their strong navy to block all supplies from reaching Germany. In response, the Germans increased their submarine attacks on ships that brought food and supplies to the Allies. They called this unrestricted submarine warfare. U.S. President Woodrow Wilson had protested this policy before, and he did so again. When American ships were sunk, the American people grew angry. Then the British intercepted a secret message from Germany to Mexico. The message offered to help Mexico regain land lost to the United States in the 1840s if Mexico allied itself with Germany. This land would include Texas, Arizona, California, and New Mexico. This and the submarine attacks turned many Americans against Germany. In April 1917, Congress declared war on Germany. By that year, the war had a terrible impact, killing millions and radically changing the lives of millions more. People at home as well as soldiers. This Great War, as it was called, was a total war. It demanded all the resources of the countries that fought it. Governments took control of factories, telling them what to produce and how much of it to make. Governments rationed food and other goods, limiting how much people could buy and hold. That way they were sure to provide needed supplies to the armies in the field. They used propaganda to generate support for the war, and they also took steps to put down any dissent against the war at home. With so many men in the field, women played a growing role in the economies of the countries at war. They worked in factories, offices, and shops, and they built planes and tanks. They grew food and made clothing. These changes had an impact on people's attitudes toward what kind of work women could do. In 1917, the United States entered the war, and Russia left it. Suffering during the war chipped away at the Russian people's support for the Tsar. In March, he stepped down. The new government hoped to continue fighting the war, but the Russian armies refused. Just months later, a new revolution struck. Communists seized Russia's government, and they quickly made a treaty with Germany, giving up huge amounts of land in return for peace. In March 1918, Germany tried one final attack. Once again, the German army nearly reached the heart of Paris. The soldiers were tired and their supplies were shot, though. The Allies, now with fresh American troops, drove the Germans back. Bulgaria and the Ottoman Empire surrendered. In October, a revolution toppled the Emperor of Austria-Hungary. In November, Kaiser Wilhelm II was forced to step down in Germany. The new government agreed to stop fighting, and on November 11, 1918, Europe was finally at peace. The war had made a great and terrible mark on the world. About 8.5 million soldiers had died, and another 21 million had been wounded. Countless civilians had suffered as well. The economies of the warring nations had suffered serious damage too. Farms were destroyed and factories were ruined. One estimate said the war had caused $338 billion in damage. Along with this death and destruction, the war had an emotional cost. People felt disillusioned since all the suffering did not seem to have a purpose. The art and literature of the years after the war reflected a new sense of hopelessness in people.